Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to kind of share this time together. So we are here to talk about festive finances. My name is Brittany Larrabee. I'm a health and well-being consultant for Borslow Insurance. A few housekeeping rules. I have muted everyone, but please, if you have a question, feel free to put that in the so feel free to go ahead and put your questions or comments in the chat box if you'd like to. If you feel comfortable, feel free to, at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A, so you can unmute yourself at that point in time if you'd like. All right, just admitting some more people. Awesome. Okay. So real quick, I just want to touch on the fact that Borslow is committed to the health and well-being of all of our clients, and we would love to help you. We have a variety of offerings, a variety of solutions to help you and your employees. Things such as culture audits and strategic planning, alternative wellness solutions, live webinars, such as this one, and on-site classes, health fairs, and on-site demonstrations, coaching and behavior modification solutions, and much, much more. So if this is something that sounds like solutions that your organization would benefit from, please reach out to your dedicated client consultant or your health and well-being consultant. Okay, so today we are going to talk about your ideal financial future. We'll talk about identifying wants versus needs, creating a budget, as well as smart goal setting. This is going to be interactive. I would encourage you, if you have a pen or pencil and something to write on, that would be ideal, as there's going to be some exercises that we're going to do, and I'm going to have you jot down some notes. As a reminder, this will also be recorded, and we will be sending the recording after. Okay, so we're going to start with a visualization exercise. So I want you to go ahead, and I know this might not be conventional or something, and many people practice visualization, but as far as their finances. So if you feel comfortable or more comfortable, you can go ahead and turn your video off, as we are going to close our eyes and do a short visualization. So go ahead and get comfortable in your seat. Sit up nice and tall. Okay. Close your eyes. And I want you to start visualizing what financial freedom looks and feels like to you. Or in other words, what does your ideal financial future look like? You could have words or images that pop up, a feeling. So would you like the ability to travel more frequently? Do you want to go to sleep at night knowing that you have a certain amount of money put aside in the bank? Do you want a sizable retirement fund? And what does it feel like to have that ideal financial future? What does it feel like to have the things that you want? And if you're not used to visualizing or in a form, this is a type of meditation. then allow yourself to just be curious and try something new. And as a reminder, if you feel more comfortable turning your camera off, feel free to do that. So as you continue to visualize what your ideal financial future looks like, what do you see around you? Are there specific smells? Where are you? Are you surrounded by certain people? And really try to allow yourself to imagine and to really sink into this. Okay, we'll just take another moment. All right, and if you want to wrap up any final thoughts, you can go ahead and grab a piece of paper, a journal, even if you're in front of your computer right now, so you can open up a note section and just write down any thoughts, any images, any specific pieces that you want to jot down about that ideal financial future. And I'll give you about a minute to write down, to journal, and to reflect on that experience. And this is just a taste of what a visualization exercise. And it's a really powerful exercise because it allows us to imagine and see what we want, right? What we want to become, what we want our future to look like. Okay, we'll just take 20 more seconds. Right. So go ahead and wrap up your last thought. Alrighty, so now we're going to move into talking about wants versus needs and what an appropriate time to start talking about or to continue the conversation around wants versus needs. Especially around the holidays, it's really easy to get caught up in the hype, right, of what we think we need, about what we think we want. So let's start by just laying it out. What is a want? And this may seem very basic, but a lot of times when it comes to these concepts, we really need to get back to basics. So a want is defined as a desire to possess or do something, or to wish for something. So wants aren't bad, right? We all have wants, and it's great to give in and to allow ourselves to want. It's just that we need to be honest with ourselves when it is in fact a want, right? And when we're striving for financial freedom in particular, putting some boundaries around obtaining your wants. So things like going to the nail salon, while that might be a really important part of your self-care, being really honest with yourself and identifying that that is in fact a want and not a need for your survival is important. Takeout, the latest and greatest technology, things like laptops, cell phones, iPads, cars, right? These are all wants. We don't need them, but they are fun. I'm not going to deny that. Computer is being a little slow. Okay, so needs. These, once again, pretty obvious. It's us requiring something because it's essential or very important rather than just desirable. So things like food, shelter, internet, or transportation so that we're able to work, right? And in another time, maybe internet, while it's extremely important, and nowadays most people have it, maybe before this 2020 environment that we're in, we had other methods and other means to have access to internet. Nowadays, I think it's definitely moved into that need category. So now if we start to look at wants versus needs and the holidays, what does that look like? And I think this is a really great opportunity to practice some mindfulness. And mindfulness, a lot of people think of like woo-woo, and then you have finances, which is numbers. It's black and white. It's very, very clear to understand, right? But mindfulness has a spot and a place in thinking about finances. So when we think about the holidays, right, so many of us want to create this perfect, this picture perfect experience of what we think the holidays look like. But really, what is our need? It's quality time spent with friends and family. And when it comes to finances, right, if we can really center ourselves and remember that quality time spent with those that we love is what's really important, we realize all that financial stress, right, around creating that kind of Instagram, social media, perfect experience isn't really necessary. At the end of the day, that's what, our families are not going to remember. And then we have saying yes to all of those plans, even though we can't get together with as many friends and family, neighbors as we might be able to during normal times. We still, right? There's still so many plans that we can say yes to. And while many of us might be like, well, that's not a want, a lot of us feel obligated, or we might be really used to always saying yes, or we might be really used to, like, we want to always be that yes person, or we want to always, satisfy others, and not necessarily thinking about what we want. So kind of centering ourselves really on, well, what is our need? During the holidays, when we are taking some extra time off, it's really about an opportunity to rest, recharge, and have fun. And resting, recharging, and having fun does not have to be a financial burden, right? That can look like reading a book that you've had for a long time. That can look like recharging, taking a nap or a bath. Having fun could just be playing some games that you've had lying around for a long time, right? It doesn't mean saying yes to purchasing all the gifts and creating this fancy meal. Now, of course, there are some plans, right? Really think and prioritize what is important to you and say yes to those things. But as someone used to say to me, if it's not a heck yes, then it's a no. So just be mindful of that. And then receiving a large quantity or expensive gifts. A lot of times we get really caught up in the holidays, right? Giving, receiving, which is really important, but we put such a heavy importance on gifts, right? Of actual tangible items that we have to purchase. And while that can be a great form of saying I love you, saying thank you, of showing appreciation, right? It doesn't have to be this huge to do. So we want to provide a great experience by giving lots of gifts or buying really nice, expensive gifts. But if we're really honest with ourselves, that's a want, right? That's not a need. What we really want to receive is feeling loved and appreciated. So once again, if we look at that from a financial standpoint, it's yes, I love receiving gifts, right? That's a way for someone to show me that they love me and that they appreciate me. But there are other ways that can be done, right? Someone cooks a nice meal. You have someone who's really present with you. You have a great conversation. So just thinking about what really, really matters. I recently had a conversation actually yesterday with a friend, and she was so stressed about all the financial burdens that she was feeling during this time. And we really talked about it. And when it got down to the heart of the situation, you know, her kids aren't going to always remember all the gifts, right? And all the presents they unwrapped. They're going to remember the experience, that feeling loved, having fun, feeling appreciated. So that's really important to remember. And then of course, it's the same thing. So receiving, giving, right? Just like we receive when someone provides a thank you or a way of showing us that they care in a really meaningful way, whether that involves, you know, purchasing something or not, or handmade. It's the same thing with giving. If you give time and attention to those that you care about and what you give them, that's what really matters. So sometimes I think it's just really important for us to get back to some of those basics. So now we just talked about wants versus needs around the holidays. That means, you know, during this month, and as we move to the new year, right? A lot of us have that new year, new me, new you type mindset, which not that that's entirely bad, but a lot of times that means new things, right? Purchasing new stuff. And that's not always what we need. So now if we look into budgeting, right? Sources of income. When you talk about creating a budget, you're looking at what are your sources of income and what are your expenses. So if we talk about income, and this can be really helpful just making a list initially, that's your salary, right? Wages, tips, that's your property. What is your house property, child support, capital gains, unemployment, social security, business or professional. So what are your sources of income? And then we have our expenses, rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, clothing, childcare, transportation, loans, entertainment, savings. So it's when creating a budget, this is the really step one, is starting to list out what is your income, what are those sources of income, and what are your expenses. And when starting to do this, you can even start, you know, you make your list and you just jot down what those are, and then you start to put the numbers next to them. And while there are a lot of resources when it comes to creating a budget, a lot of free resources, some of which I'll have at the end of this presentation, just keep in mind some things to keep in mind when you are creating your budget. So get curious, right? A lot of times people avoid budgeting and getting to know their finances because they are nervous. They don't want to know what they're going to find out. But get curious, right? You know, what is your debt? What are you paying on a regular basis? Especially if you set up, you know, what is my paycheck? What are the deductions from my paycheck? So start to just get curious and think of it as a scavenger hunt. Always start with your needs, right? We talked about our wants versus our needs, but our needs are the most important category. So when you create your budget, put those needs up at the top. The rest, what's left over, that is for our wants. Be realistic when creating your budget, right? I used to do this all the time where I would be super, super strict in my budget, but it allowed no room for me to have any type of flexibility. So whether that is, you know that self-care is important to you and you really like going to get massages, right? Like find a way to be realistic with your budget so that you're still allowing yourself some wiggle room to make mistakes as well as to have a little bit of fun. Find a system, make a schedule, and there are tons of different systems out there, right? And what might work for me might not work for you. So find a system that really does work for you. Make a schedule and be consistent about it. These two really go hand in hand. So I actually have each week on Fridays, I set aside an hour after my workday is done. Sometimes I get a glass of wine, sometimes it's tea, and I have my finance Fridays where I go ahead and I update my finances. and consistently doing that, right? That's where I start to see the progress being made. And practice self-compassion. You're not meant to do this perfectly. And especially if you're just getting started, right? It's the same thing as weight loss. It takes time to put that weight on. It's going to take time to get that weight off in a healthy way. It's the same thing with your budget, right? And with your finances. If you're not necessarily where you want to be, it's taken a while for you to get there. So now it's going to take some time for you to get out of that. All right, so now we're going to move into some goal setting and talking about goal setting, right? We've talked about wants versus needs. Well, we started off with a visualization. What is your ideal future? Then we talked about wants versus needs. And I think that's nice because we've got that goal, kind of that idea of where we want to be. And then if we can be honest with ourselves, well, what do I really need? And what are just my wants? And then we start to look at, okay, creating a budget and how that is helpful, right? It provides some structure. It helps us to see where we are spending and what sources of income we have. And that's really a crucial step. Now it's kind of combining all this with goal setting. So what is goal setting when it comes to finances? Financial goals are the personal big picture objectives you set for yourself to save and spend money, right? And that looks different for all of us. So I want you to, that piece of paper that you have, just jot down some words, some thoughts that you have, and we'll make this a little bit of a working exercise. So what is the financial challenge or opportunity that you want to address? And don't feel like you need to share this in the chat. If you'd like to, you can, but finances are a deeply personal topic. So just keep that to yourself if you feel more comfortable. Just take a few seconds. Okay, if you want to wrap up that thought, and if you want to come back to these, since there will be a recording, you can absolutely, even if it's just forwarding to this section, and if you want to go a little bit deeper into thinking about these, you absolutely can. So what steps can you take to address that challenge? Right, so if, for example, if the financial challenge is debt, right? So what steps can you take to address that challenge? Okay. How will you know that you've met your goal? So it's really important that when we set goals, that we can be, it's very clear when we have reached that, when we have met that goal, so that we can celebrate. Okay, and just take 20 more seconds to write down any notes or thoughts. Okay. So we've all probably mostly heard of SMART goals, and it's really important as we start to get some clarity, we start to get an idea of what our challenges are, steps that we can take there, and when we're setting those specific goals, that we are smart about them. So keep them smart, specific, manageable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, right? We want them very, very clear, where there's no real wiggle room about when we look at that goal. Hey, did I attain it? Did I not? It's very easy to understand. So what are some examples of a SMART goal? Here we have one example. So what's an unclear goal? I will save $700. Okay, well, That doesn't when. A SMART goal would be by March 31st, 2021, I will have added $700 to my emergency savings fund by transferring $100 per biweekly paycheck, right? That is very clear what steps I need to take. So I have a date. I know what date I want to achieve that goal by. I know what the total amount that I want to save and where that money is being saved to, right? It's going to my emergency savings fund. And how am I going to do that? Because each biweekly paycheck, I'm going to transfer $100 to that savings fund. So that is very specific, very clear. It meets the SMART goal criteria. Okay. Another example, I will create a budget. There are lots of people that have maybe dabbled in creating budgets, but aren't consistent about it. Or maybe it's time for a refresh. So an unclear goal, I will create one. Okay. A SMART goal would be by December 31st, 2020, I will watch 2 YouTube videos on budgeting and create my first draft of my January 2021 budget that outlines all of my income and expenses. That is very clear. That gives me all the criteria, right? So this is just a reminder that just like any goal that you are trying to achieve, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So I want you to take a moment to jot down 1 to 3, right? 1 being the minimum, 3 being the max, clearly defined, simple steps for you to take towards your goal. So if you have an idea, maybe you haven't written down, all the exact pieces of your SMART goal, but if you have a general idea, right, and you can work on that in your own time, I want you to write down 1 to 3 things that you can do within the next week, right, to help you achieve that goal that you can take. Maybe it's watching a video. Maybe your sister or your brother are really great at budgeting. So asking them to send you the template that they use. Maybe another one could be, hey, I'm going to look at my existing budget and look for ways that I can cut the fat, right? Where I can minimize my spending. Or identify 3 things that I really don't need to spend money on this holiday season. Okay, so whenever you are done writing out your thoughts, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today, and I would love to answer if you have any questions around finances, being mindful about your finances, budgeting. Feel free to go ahead and write those in the chat box. And I know someone mentioned that they wanted a goal was to be debt free. There are so many great and unique financial goals to work towards, and hopefully no questions means you're all financial experts. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. The recording will be sent out after, maybe a little bit later today or first thing tomorrow, just because of schedules. And happy holidays, and I look forward to hopefully working with you in the future. Bye, everyone.